Welcome to Cheater Confessions. Let's get started with today's story. The bistro was half empty, a Thursday night lull. Soft jazz played from an old speaker in the corner. I remember the tablecloth more than the music, white, but with a faint stain near the edge, like someone had spilled wine weeks ago, and no one bothered to replace it. Barbara had insisted we come here. She said it would be nice to slow down, just the two of us. She ordered scallops, told the waiter she wanted the wine list, and smiled at me like nothing was off. I ordered the steak, though I wasn't hungry. We made small talk about the weather, about how her office was moving floors. It was so ordinary that what came next nearly snapped the world in half. She leaned forward, elbows on the table, and said in the same tone she uses when she reminds me to pick up milk, "I've been seeing someone. His name is Julian Hart." No, sorry. No, it was a mistake. Just that. Delivered plain, like a fact. She let the name hang there like I was supposed to recognize it. And I did. Julian wasn't a stranger. He worked in marketing, one of those smooth types who always turned up at Barbara's work events. Expensive watch, fast smile, the kind of man who thought every room was better with him in it. I stared at her, waiting for the smirk, the punchline. But her eyes didn't dance. They were steady, calm. "You don't look surprised," she said, sipping her wine. "I'm not sure what I'm supposed to look like," I answered. She gave a half shrug. "I didn't want this to sound ugly. I thought maybe it could wake us up, you know? Couples fall asleep sometimes. Julian, he makes me feel alive. I thought you'd notice the difference." I cut into my steak. I felt nothing, at least nothing she expected. No yelling, no begging. When the bill came, she gave her usual show of reaching for her purse, then paused, waiting for me to take it. I slid my card across the table, signed the slip, and finally spoke. "You planned this dinner for tonight," I said evenly. She blinked. "Yes, so you'd hear it from me." I pushed back my chair, stood, and looked at her once more. "Good," I said. "Then you've started something you won't be able to finish." And I walked out. I didn't drive straight home. I sat in the car for half an hour, staring at the empty street. When I finally walked inside, the house felt staged. It looked like a home, but it didn't feel like one. I poured a glass of water, sat at the kitchen table, and pulled out my phone. That's when I remembered the garage camera. I'd installed it months earlier after someone tried to steal my bike. I almost forgot it was there. It recorded on motion, backing everything up to the cloud. Curiosity pushed me. I opened the app, scrolled through the archive, and pressed play. The screen lit up with grainy footage. Barbara, 3 weeks ago, stepping into the garage at night. She wasn't alone. Julian followed her in, his hand on her back like he belonged here. They laughed, whispered, and slipped inside the house. I skipped forward. 2 nights later, same thing. Then again, a week later. On one clip, the mic caught just enough. Barbara's voice, sharp with laughter. "Mason would never notice. He's too set in his routines." Julian chuckled, and the sound made my stomach turn. I leaned back, phone in hand, staring at the still frame of them sneaking past my workbench. My chest felt tight, but not from heartbreak. From clarity. I wasn't dealing with a mistake. I was dealing with a pattern. She hadn't told me tonight because of guilt. She told me because she thought she was ahead, in control. I sat in the dark kitchen, replaying the clips, my fingers steady as I bookmarked each one. I didn't yell, I just watched, absorbing every second like a quiet accountant balancing a ledger. I heard the door open. Barbara came in quietly, thinking I was asleep. She set her purse on the counter and tiptoed upstairs. She thought tonight was the night she flipped the script. She didn't know she'd just handed me the first page of mine. The next morning, Barbara moved around the kitchen like nothing had happened. I didn't ask where she had been after the dinner, and she didn't offer an explanation. She made coffee and asked if I'd slept well. Her performance was neat, almost cheerful. I answered with nods, nothing more. That silence unsettled her more than any outburst could. By noon, I had a plan. If she thought she was ahead, I'd let her keep thinking that. But I'd start forcing her hand. The first move was small. I printed an intake form for a marital mediator, left it half sticking out of the printer tray in my office. Then I left a rental application open on my laptop screen, angled just enough for her to notice if she walked by. Nothing explained, nothing said. That evening, I watched her glance at the printer, then the laptop. Her face stayed neutral, but her hand tightened on the wine glass. Later that night, when she thought I was asleep, I heard her voice in the hallway, soft, hurried on the phone. "We might have a problem," she whispered. She didn't say Julian's name, but I didn't need her to. The next day, I met with Mira Desai, a friend who worked in corporate compliance. We sat in a corner booth at a cafe. I didn't tell her everything, just enough. "I think my wife is hiding things. If you were me, how would you track it?" Mira stirred her coffee. "Start with finances. Patterns tell the story. Keep a clean timeline. And don't tip your hand until you know the full picture." I nodded, pocketing her words like tools. When I got home, Barbara was unusually affectionate. She asked if I wanted dinner together, rubbed my shoulders while I scrolled on my phone. It was all theater. She thought she was calming me down. What she didn't realize was that every glance, every whisper, every sudden kindness was proof. Proof she was worried. And fear, I knew, was leverage. I took Mira's advice seriously. The next night, after Barbara went upstairs early with a book, I sat in the study and opened our joint account statements. I'd never looked too closely before. Bills, groceries, transfers. I trusted her with most of it. This time, I combed through line by line. Patterns stood out quickly. A series of payments, each a few $100s, all coded as J. Hart Creative. I knew enough to connect the initials. Then there was a charge labeled Wellness Retreat, but the address matched a boutique hotel downtown. Over 5 months, nearly $6,000 had slipped out in plain sight. I pulled screenshots, printed each page, and marked the totals with a pen. By the time I finished, I had a packet, dates, amounts, even one still image from the garage camera clipped on top. It wasn't dramatic, but it was undeniable. The following evening, Barbara brought up a gallery opening hosted by Jade Chen, one of her coworkers. She said it with a rehearsed casualness, like she was offering me a chance to tag along. I smiled politely and told her I had other plans. Later, while she showered, I checked the shared tablet we once used for vacation planning. She'd forgotten to sign out of her messages. A chat thread confirmed it. Julian was going to the same event. Their excitement wasn't hidden. It was casual, almost smug. I closed the tablet and sat in silence. I had the when, the where, and the who. All I needed now was the how. The gallery wasn't mine, but that worked in my favor. Public enough for witnesses, discreet enough that I wouldn't have to raise my voice. She wanted to look cultured, connected, untouchable. I would let her keep that image for exactly long enough to shatter it. I slid the packet into a plain folder and wrote her name across the front. Not a letter, not a note, just Barbara. For the first time since dinner, I felt steady. I arrived at Jade Chen's gallery 40 minutes after the opening began. The place buzzed with chatter, glasses clinking against polished concrete floors. Barbara stood near the back, laughing with Julian. His hand brushed her elbow as though it belonged there. She leaned in, comfortable, oblivious. Around them, co-workers and strangers floated by, none the wiser. I walked straight toward them. Barbara saw me first. The smile slid off her face, her wine glass pausing midair. Julian turned, lips parting into something between a grin and a sneer. "Mason," Barbara said, her voice higher than usual. "I didn't think you'd—" "Funny kind of networking," I said, loud enough for the people nearby to catch it. A silence settled, quick and sharp. Julian stuck out his hand like a man trying to smooth over an accident. "Didn't know you'd be here." I ignored it. Instead, I crossed to the coat check counter, set the folder down, and said evenly, "This is for Barbara. She'll know what it is." The attendant nodded, confused but polite. I turned back once more. Barbara's eyes darted from me to the folder, her lips parting without sound. "You should open it now," I said. Then I walked away. By the time I reached the door, I heard the first whispers spreading. The folder had been opened. Inside, the payment trail, the hotel receipt, the still from the garage camera, and on top, a neatly clipped packet of divorce papers already bearing my signature. Labeled, dated, unmistakable. Someone gasped. Someone else muttered, "Is that real?" The room's energy shifted, conversations tilting in a new direction. I didn't stop. I didn't need to. I stepped out into the night. Behind me, the gallery's chatter swelled, then fractured, Barbara's carefully built image unraveling in real time. I had said fewer words, but the evidence would speak for me long after I left. Barbara didn't come home that night. The house stayed still, the bed untouched. By morning, 2 texts waited on my phone. "We need to talk. Please don't make this worse." I put the phone face down and brewed coffee. No reply. By noon, I'd logged into our accounts and pulled my share, exactly half of what I'd put in. I canceled the card she'd been using for dinners I never attended. For the first time in years, the finances looked clean. That evening, Barbara walked through the door like a stranger who'd lost the key to her own home. She dropped her purse on the counter, opened her mouth, then closed it again. Finally, "Mason, can we sit down? Just, just talk." "I'm busy," I said without looking up from the paper. Her voice cracked. "You're not even going to listen?" I folded the paper. "I listened. At dinner. Remember?" She froze. That silence was heavier than any argument. The next few days, she tried softer tactics. She cooked meals we hadn't shared in months. She left notes on the fridge. "I made your favorite tea. Can we start fresh?" Once, she even reached for my hand in the hallway, her fingers trembling. I didn't bite. I moved into the guest room, locked the door, and drew a line she couldn't cross. I built a new rhythm. Morning runs around the block, lungs burning in a way that felt alive again. Evenings at a woodworking class Mira had recommended, the smell of fresh pine was stronger than any perfume. I grabbed dinner with my brother, laughed until my stomach hurt. The more I stayed quiet, the more Barbara filled the space with her desperation. But it wasn't remorse I heard. It was fear. Fear of being left with nothing. For me, it was gone. 2 weeks passed after the gallery. Barbara moved through the house like a shadow, leaving small offerings behind. I never answered. I wasn't cruel, but I was done. Silence was enough. One evening, I walked into the kitchen as she stood at the sink, hands gripping the counter. She turned, her eyes rimmed red. "Mason," she said quietly, "is this really it? After all these years?" I studied her, the woman who had once been my anchor. "It ended a long time ago, Barbara. I just finally stopped pretending." She shook her head, tears starting down her cheeks. "I made mistakes, but we can fix this." "No," I cut in. My voice was steady. "You broke it, and you lied about it, and you spent money that wasn't yours. You didn't just betray me. You underestimated me." The words landed heavier than shouting ever could. She blinked, searching for a foothold that wasn't there. The next morning, I packed one suitcase. Just clothes, a few books, my tools. I left the key on the kitchen counter with a short letter. Utilities, mail forwarding, and the bank account division already handled. Nothing sentimental, nothing open-ended. When I closed the front door behind me, I didn't look back. The divorce moved quickly once the papers were filed. I had every record ready. Dates, transactions, footage, and there was nothing she could argue against. Within months, it was final. Barbara tried leaning on Julian after the fallout, but the cracks showed fast. He liked the chase, not the wreckage. When her coworkers stopped inviting her out and the money dried up, Julian began fading from the picture. I heard that he'd already started seeing someone else. Barbara was left with the silence she once thought she could control. Now I live in a modest loft above a print shop. The walls are thin, and the plumbing clanks at night, but the air feels clean. My sister visited last weekend. We ordered takeout, watched an old movie, and laughed without glancing over our shoulders. There are no notes on the fridge here, no whispered phone calls in the hallway, just quiet. People think closure comes from dramatic endings, from screaming matches or broken dishes. I know better. Closure is leaving calmly, on your own terms, without needing to prove a thing. Barbara thought dinner was her moment of control. She thought confessing would make her stronger. But that was the night I stopped begging for love that was never really mine. Thank you for watching.